And good evening, everyone. Welcome to Arcane Radio. I'm Sean the Fork Chop Forker, joined by Lon Strickler tonight. And the weather is just hampering some of our technical issues, but we're here nonetheless. Lon, how the hell are you tonight, big guy?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, it's the weather. The weather's really screwing us up.
It is. The
I
intro played twice.
I thought it did. I saw it buffer, and I saw it come back on. So yeah, it's playing havoc. Skype's having I don't know. It's just going crazy. So hopefully we'll get through this tonight.
We'll get it figured out. We got a good show tonight. Mr. David Weatherly's on the program. David's joining us. Folks, if you're familiar with David, you probably go to his website, Two Crows Paranormal, his blog site where he talks about black eyed kids and all kinds of strange, weird phenomena. And we're glad to have him on the program tonight. He's been hard to get on the program. We've had various reasons we've had to cancel our programs with him, and the weather's not making it any easier tonight.
No, I don't know why. It just seems like it happens. I mean, every time we schedule David, there seems to be an issue somewhere down the line. So, hopefully things go okay tonight.
It's like something doesn't want us to talk to David.
Mm, really,
Perhaps he's closer to the truth than we'd like to believe.
maybe.
Who knows? Who knows? But we're here tonight, Lon. Snowing down here in or up here in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Weren't expecting that. Well, I guess I was expecting it, but not expecting to get any because this whole year's been nothing but lies for
Yeah.
snow, and we finally got some.
Yeah, well, they've been lying to you, but we get dumped on. So, unfortunately, down here in Maryland, it's been pretty snowy. I don't know how much we got last night, but it was a decent amount. And so this stuff is, I think, it's starting to sleet now, and I got to go out tomorrow, and I'm not looking forward to it. So
Well, be
anyway,
safe out there.
you know,
I have to go home tonight after the show, so I'll be driving from the studio in downtown Williamsport. We relocated, of course, as folks may know, to our nice little new
mhm,
studio here, and it's nice and cozy as I can sit and watch the snow fall out the window. It's pretty nice.
mhm.
It's a nice ambiance, and I'm just glad to be here tonight, Lon. Like I said, a good show with David Weatherly joining us here in about 25 minutes, but I didn't get to watch the X Files tonight either, so I'm going to be behind the times. I'm 2 episodes behind now.
Yeah, I had to record it myself. I dozed off. Be honest with you, I was sitting here working on some stuff, and I dozed off. And the first thing I know, my son's in here saying, "Don't you have a radio show tonight?" Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I had to
Cat's laying
work.
on, sleeping and snoring. Yeah, you were working. Uh,
It's one of those things.
yeah, this week, a lot of weird stuff. I got some pretty interesting inquiries this week. First off, our buddy Stan Gordon, he put out his final report, Strange Encounters, UFOs, Mysterious Creatures of Pennsylvania
Hmm.
during 2015. Uh, he put out I mean, it's like it is almost every year. There's a lot of weird stuff. Uh, and this is stuff that doesn't even include the dog man. And, we all know about that. And in fact, I want to talk to David about that a little bit tonight. But his Stan's got a few oddball things up here. So if you want to go read what his report is for 2015, you can go to Fams and Monsters or go to Stan's website at www.stangordon.info and go on there and see what he's got.
I'm sure it was quite the busy year. 2015 was really strange
Yeah.
in terms of sightings. We had some Bigfoot encounters come in, but more so, really, this dog man kind of phenomena sweeping across Pennsylvania. And of course, you've been on top of that.
Yeah.
And these flying rays that have been coming out of nowhere the last couple of years that you've been on top of. So, some really strange cryptids out there aside from the Bigfoot that have really caught our eye here, at least on Arcane Radio, Phantoms and Monsters. And of course, folks, you can always go to the website, phantomsandmonsters.com, and check out all the articles and stories that Lon and Butch and everyone else has been investigating. Great stuff on there. Great reports from J.C. Johnson out there in the Four Corners area. just loaded with information. So if you want a good cryptid story, go out and go to phantomsandmonsters.com or go on to amazon.com and buy Lon's books.
And our buddy Butch is going to be on Coast to Coast AM on the 20th, 1 o'clock a.m. He's going to be talking about the Dogman phenomena on there. So I guess he'll be on there with George Norrie. So that'll be interesting. The information's getting out. There's no doubt about it. We had a few more reports come in, and well, I've already talked about the report down in Franklin County, but we've got a report, also a possible report in York, Pennsylvania now too. So, and it's actually in the same area of York where we've been having the Bigfoot sightings. That Jacobus area, Stewartstown, and down around there, southern York County, near the Pennsylvania Maryland border. So, I don't know. I mean, that's an area I'm moving up to sometime this year. So, maybe I can get out in the field and start checking into some of that stuff. But yeah, we've been getting a lot of strange things up in that area now for the past year and a half.
I feel like if we get you out there, we're never going to get you back.
Yeah,
Going to go out there and follow something, get lost, maybe wander into one of those portals.
yeah, really. My luck.
That would be your luck too. Still trying to get David Paulides on the show. We still haven't given up on that.
Yeah, we've been trying. He's been busy.
He is. He's got a lot of stuff going on right now with
He had that, he had that movie
mhm.
going, taping that, and he's doing some other stuff too. I mean, I just keep sending him emails and hoping he's gonna answer me and say, "Yeah, I got a little bit of time here. I'll come in on the show." So, but we'll keep bringing good guests, and
Mhm.
hopefully we'll get David on.
Well, you and I have talked.
Uh,
We've talked to him before on Beyond the Edge, and we had a really great interview
yeah,
with him over there. And
yeah,
I'd like to have him on our program, Arcane Radio. You're listening to arcaneradio.com. And be glad to talk to Mr. Paulides on our program and talk about some of these strange human disappearances. And folks, if you're interested in what's going on there, you can get the books. Missing 411 is the series. I don't recall the website off the top of my head, Lon. What's the website?
that's North American Bigfoot. If you just put it on Google, you'll get the website.
Missing
But
411.
yeah, the books are the missing 411 books.
They're fantastic.
I gotta get the library. I want to get the whole library. And what is it? 5 books now?
5 books now. Yeah, I'm going to get the hardback copies, hardcover. I don't know what the hell I'm talking
Yeah,
about tonight. Hardcover
yeah.
copies.
I mean, as if I need more books, but I'm gonna pay for it when I move. Believe me, it's gonna be a mess. But
Mrs. Forkjob doesn't let me buy books anymore. I have to get all digital. But I don't
yeah,
listen to her, and if I can sneak a book in here or there, I go ahead and do it.
yeah, I'd rather have the real book. I'll be quite honest with you. I don't know. I mean, I beat my books up. I mean, I dog ear them and notes and everything else in them, but that's just the way I am.
My problem
Uh,
is when I fall asleep with the iPad and I drop it on my face, it hurts a lot more than a book. And that
yeah,
happens a lot.
uh,
Goes off and drop an iPad on my face. It just doesn't feel the same as a nice soft paperback. But you live and learn.
you live and learn.
So what's been going on at Phantoms and Monsters this week? What do you got good for us? I don't have anything good. I've been way too
I
busy.
yeah, I got a really interesting sighting report
Hmm.
the other day, actually in the Phoenix area. Uh,
Were they lights?
no,
No.
has to do with humanoids. I don't know what it was the witness saw. I'm actually digging into this now. There are a few extenuating circumstances, I think, and I think it has to do with somebody other than her. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and read what she sent me and some of the follow up I added to it as well.
Story time with Lon Strickler.
I received this inquiry on this past Wednesday from an elderly woman in the Phoenix suburbs of Surprise, Arizona. She witnessed 2 humanoid beings standing outside her bedroom window a few days before Christmas 2015. Now, the following report includes most of the information from the incident, though there are a few personal notes that I've redacted. I actually called and talked to the witness Thursday night and attempted to get more information, so I included everything in this report. Um, Now, I'm presenting this case to readers and investigators as a means of additional data and knowledge about these beings, because she was very alarmed by it. And I'll be honest with you, I did a digital sketch of it, and but these are pretty odd looking beings. Um, so let me go ahead and read her initial email. This was on February 10, 2016. Around 12:21 or 12:22, 2015, I woke up about 1:30 a.m. and I glanced out my bedroom window, and that is what I saw: two gray, short people-like figures with cone heads. The tallest stood approximately 5 foot tall. Excuse me, 4 foot tall, and the smallest was about 3 foot. Stood directly in front of the taller one. They stood motionless. I looked, then looked again, as I have never seen anything like this ever. I sat on the edge of my bed and I kept looking at them. They didn't move. Neither one of them had facial features at all. It appeared to me they had something over their heads to hide their appearance. I didn't let my dog out, as I didn't know what could happen. I laid back down in bed and went to sleep. I didn't awake until the next morning at 8:30, which is about 7 hours. And she explained to me when I talked to her that she just doesn't sleep that long. Uh, at the most, she'll usually sleep about 4 hours, but because of a medical condition, she has to get up. And whatever, they must put the knockout on her, from what I can tell here. Uh, Now, what she did, she called the police a week or so later. Now, they just told me to go to the ER or call the crisis center. They wrote down the telephone number of the crisis center and they left my home. About a week later, I went to my church, and the priest didn't believe me or didn't want to discuss this alien encounter, which is, that's par for the course.
Mm,
Never, they never wanted to talk about that. So,
I wonder why.
I have done a lot of research online, and these grays with cone heads have been seen before and are described as I have described them. I have never believed in UFOs or paranormal sightings, or have I ever viewed any website on my computer until after I encountered these two gray, little gray people looking in my bedroom window. This was not a dream. I was completely awake. No medicine I take has any side effects that would cause me to hallucinate. I'm a senior citizen living alone. This has scared me. They may not, they have, excuse me, they may not have come back. Or they may come back. I worry that they might come back. I have so many questions. I also called channel 113 EWTN TV. The person I talked to at EWTN didn't believe me and
Mm.
did not want to discuss the matter. Well, unfortunately, that TV station is a religious station, so that doesn't surprise me either.
Because they're
Please
supposed to talk
help
about
me.
aliens, you know.
I have not told my friends or family. Please help me with answers I have. I pray daily that I never see them again. Uh, I called the witness and got some specific details. Though a lot of it was personal. So she did state that these beings wore full length cloaks that were the same color, which was like a grayish brown. And this was the same color as the cone like covering over the head and face. The cone was more like a helmet. She also stated that she never sleeps more than 3 hours without waking, but she slept for the uninterrupted 7 hours, which she states she has never done before or since. Now, there was a UFO sighting around the same time, same day, same time in Surprise, Arizona. It was just a brief sighting of a blue oval light that shot over the homes in her neighborhood. Um, Now, after receiving all the additional details, I came up with one possibility, but this is strictly a theory. This, in some respects, these beings remind me of the descriptions for the Taros species, which you spell that Teros. Now, I talked to, well, I didn't talk. I sent the information to Albert Rosales and had him look into it. He agrees that these humanoids do look like a Taros species. These are a supposed Earth underground dwelling race of humanoids with cone-shaped heads. Now, they do have human-like facial features, so this may have been a face covering of some type. They are also referred to as a Sunanans, the yearly ones, an ancient race that appears at certain times of the year. Some of the early native people in North America made reference to them, mostly in the desert southwest. So this sighting does kind of parallel the legend since this occurred in Arizona. So as I said before, I mean, any information I can get from anybody would be appreciated. I want to try to figure out what this is. Now, Albert sent me, which is kind of interesting. He sent me a sighting from Chile, which happened the day before this sighting in Arizona, and the descriptions are fairly similar. So, I don't know if it was related or not, but this is a humanoid, and of course, Albert documents all these different
Mm-hmm.
humanoids,
So it's
and
like a gray with a cone head, or
yeah, I mean, she never saw any skin or whatever you want to call it. No, didn't see any hands. She said they were covered up by a cloak. She said that she didn't see down to the ground, feet or anything, though this cloak may have covered it. But the head was like a cone shape, but it was covered with this helmet that came down to the shoulders and fully enveloped the face. So, she didn't see any facial features, and
I see.
I this is odd. I mean, I I don't I have no idea what it was really. I mean, I'm just speculating from what information I could get, and I've sent this out to several people who do have had reports of humanoids, but of course Albert's probably the best
Mm-hmm.
source for this. So hopefully he may come up with something else. But in the meantime, there are some extenuating circumstances not involving her, and actually it's some personal stuff as far as the family goes. So I don't know if there's an instance or somebody in the family who actually doesn't live there anymore has had these encounters, um, and these things were seeking them. I don't know. She hasn't had anything since then. So, I'm just trying to keep her from freaking out on me because she was really upset. I mean, she was really upset. So,
Well, it's definitely something to be freaked out about. I mean,
yeah.
I couldn't imagine being in a situation like that. We kind of talked about that last week when we had Brett Oldham on the show, and uh, you know how I feel about the abduction scenario. To me, it's just difficult to validate, but these folks' stories and whatever they're experiencing is very real to them, and it's scary. It's just horrifying.
Well, it's good when you get a report like this from somebody who has no idea about any of this phenomenon. And even though most most chances that they're really upset about it, I think the information is, it's new information, and they don't have any reference as to being able to change it. And if I can get some other sightings similar to this, maybe we can do some pinpointing. I be quite honest with you, Phoenix in the Phoenix area had that week of Christmas had I think I counted 11 UFO sightings in that week, and that was off MUFON,
Wow,
Newport,
11.
another bait. Yeah, yeah, there was a lot of activity going on,
That's a
and
lot.
yeah, I don't know, if it's related or not, but it's kind of interesting. So we'll see.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Anything else you got?
Yeah, I my researcher friend Jamie Bryan sent something to me, and it's interesting because it was actually a call in when I was on Coast to Coast the last time. Um, and I remembered, and I had completely forgotten about it. And he went ahead and transcribed it for me. But this involves the Carthage Underground again. Now, if you're not familiar with the Carthage Underground, it's a series of caves, and it's a huge system near Carthage, Missouri, and they store food and have offices in there, and there have been rumors that the Navy and the military have taken over parts of this system over the years. And I had received a reptoid report several years ago, and that was, well, it was a pretty well known report. Well, anyway, this woman by the name of Connie had called into Coast to Coast, and this is what she told me. I was calling about the Carthage Underground. That Carthage Underground, I haven't been there since 1996. We used to be able to drive in there, and it was a huge cave. It's a man-made cave. It's not natural. They use it for offices, storing food. It's really cool in there. I don't know what it is now, but it's all locked up and secure, so you can't get in there. Anyway, 1996, I drove through there, and it does have a little bit of a creep factor to it. But one time I stopped by the Walmart in Carthage, and I walked in. I was in line and got a couple of items. Somebody behind me had stuff up on the counter, and I just looked at it and I thought, huh, they must be going camping because it looked like the stuff you'd use for camping. But I noticed this tremendous odor, and I thought, what in the world is that? That odor, smell. I can't even describe it. It was so bad. And I turned around and I looked at the man behind me, and he was real tall, wearing black clothes, had dark hair, but his eyes were slits. And I mean, they were. I get the biggest creep factor from it. I mean, I just thought he was pure evil. At the time, I didn't associate with aliens or UFOs or anything like that, but at the time, I thought it was a demon because he creeped me out. That was around the same time that I had been over at that cave. And, I tell you, I've heard this before. Uh, these sightings of reptoid like humanoids, individuals, have come from that Carthage area. I know people do now take excursions on boat underneath those and in those caves now because there's an actual river that runs through there. So, but I've actually had people tell me that they've been in there and seen some pretty odd things. And of course, the original report that I had received was these two boys that had taken their bikes and rode in there. How they got in there, I don't know, but they went pretty deep in, and they actually got chased out by this reptilian type being. And
Those reptilians.
yeah, so here's another underground facility, but this one in Carthage is huge. Now I don't even know what they do there anymore. I know there is a company that runs it. Um, what exactly it's used for now, I don't know.
I don't know either.
But you know, so there you go.
Some strange encounters indeed.
Yep.
Well, folks, as I talked about before we got started with Lon's Weekly recap here. David Weatherly is our guest tonight. David Weatherly is a paranormal investigator and author. For over 35 years, he has explored the world of the strange, investigating cases around the country and abroad. He has written and lectured on a diverse range of topics, including cryptozoology, UFOlogy, and hauntings. David has also studied shamanic and magical traditions with elders from numerous cultures, including Europe, Tibet, Native America, and Africa. He has appeared on numerous radio programs, including Coast to Coast AM, Dreamland, and Darkness Radio. David was also featured in Watchers 5, Let Me In. He is a writer for Intrepid Magazine and is the author of The Black-Eyed Children and Strange Intruders. Follow David on Twitter at Two Crows Para and his blog at Two Crows Paranormal, which is twocrowsparanormal.blogspot.com. And when we come back from the break, we'll be back with David Weatherly. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. All right, folks, welcome back. Arcane Radio. Sean Forker, Lon Strickler, and our guest tonight, Mr. David Weatherly. David, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
Our pleasure. Lon, take it away while I get things situated here, and I'll be right back.
Okay. Hey, David, how you doing, man? It's been
Hey, Lon. Good to talk to you, buddy.
It seems like every time we try to get you on the show, there's something comes up, and well, we do have you tonight. So thank God. Yeah, you just got done telling me you got a new Skinwalker Report. So let's start off with that.
Yeah, sure, man. This is this is pretty fascinating. You know, Lon, I've been collecting these things for just years, and a lot of it, you know, now is kind of bleeding over into the Dogman stuff because there are a lot of similarities. But I've always been particularly fascinated with the whole Skinwalker topic around the Four Corners region, primarily, which is, you know, they're Navajo in origin, the term is. But, man, I got this report that just came in, and it's it sounds pretty valid. The guy was really shaken up when I talked to him. I just had sort of an initial interview with him. I'm actually going to get out to the site, hopefully, within about a week and see what I can find. But the account is that this fellow and his girlfriend were driving. This is in the Four Corners region. I'm not going to give a specific location at this point, obviously, but he was driving in a sort of desolate area, got a flat tire. Now, during the drive, and this is late afternoon, early evening, he had seen a couple of coyotes alongside the road, which is, you know, not an unusual occurrence in that part of the country. So, you know, another 15 or 20 minutes up the road, he gets a flat. He pulls over and he starts repairing it. And he said that as he was getting the spare out of the trunk, he noticed these two coyotes were back. Now, they were a little bit in the distance, but he saw them, you know, pretty clearly, good visibility. He proceeded to change his tire. And he said that he just started growing more and more uneasy as he was changing this tire. Now, you know, I don't know if you've ever been out to any of this part of the country, Lon, but it's, you know, parts of it are really just desolate. I mean, you can, you know, drive for a long way and not see anybody. And on this particular occasion, there was no other traffic or anything that went by. And he's just got the tire on, and he's starting to tighten the lug nuts. And he said that he just felt the hair on the back of his neck go up. And he rose up and looked across his car to the side of the road where he had seen the coyotes. They were closer. They were much closer. And he said that as he watched them, that he felt like both of them were just kind of staring at him. And one of them was sitting on its haunches, and the other was sort of circling around. Well, the one that was circling around suddenly rose up on its hind legs so that it was standing bipedally. And now the gentleman giving me this account is Navajo. So, you know, right away, what came into his mind were, you know, I won't repeat his phrase, but skinwalkers, essentially. And he said that he didn't even finish tightening the lug nuts, that he jumped in his car and started driving. And he said that he and his girlfriend just got out of there as quick as they could, and that when he looked in his rearview mirror, that he saw both of them, what he thought were coyotes, standing on their hind legs and taking on almost a more human form, is how he stated it. Now, like I said, I'm hoping I want to get a lot more details from this account. I'm not sure, he was so shaken up when he was telling me about it. And this literally this happened this past week.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty hot report. And man, what the creep factor really goes up when you see what's supposed to be a normal animal stand up on its hind legs.
Yeah, and two of them. That's what gets me. It's kind of rare to have multiples, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of unusual, especially with the Skinwalker Encounters. Typically, it's people that see one. And of course, we really, when you start delving into the whole Navajo lore that surrounds the idea of skinwalkers, then, a lot of the times people feel like there's a particular skinwalker that is stalking them or coming after them. Because in the Navajo belief system, a skinwalker essentially is a witch. And it's black magic, it's dark magic. Now, before anybody listening thinks I'm offending, Western European practitioners of witchcraft or Wicca or any of the modern equivalents or anything like that, that's not what we're talking about at all. In the Navajo cosmology, the term, the rough Western term equates to witch, and it means someone who practices a very dark form of magic, which allows them to steal the form of another animal or person. And they do this typically by stealing the skin. Hence, we get the term skinwalker. And, what happens is these practitioners, they have to go through a whole series of initiations and rituals, and they will typically take the skin of an animal. What is most common is a coyote or a wolf or a dog, the canids, and they will steal the skin, which allows them to shapeshift into the form of that animal.
Right.
Now, some of this kind of sounds like fantasy or mythology or something to a lot of people, but then you can't discard that these accounts go far, far back in history, and there are a lot of modern accounts that just continue. And I think it's pretty fascinating when you correlate it, with the European werewolf and with, of course, the dogman sightings that are just, cropping up like crazy all around this country.
Yeah, well, we've been looking into some of the sightings in Pennsylvania that we've been getting the past couple of years, and I think we've got like 11 or 12 actual sightings now in the past year.
Oh yeah,
Central Pennsylvania.
Yeah, just modern ones.
Yeah, and of course,
Right.
I contacted you last summer about that sighting up near Denver, and fortunately.
Right.
JC was already up there. JC and Jack were already up there.
Butch is saying 12.
That was that was kind of freaky. So, I don't know. It does seem like there may be a connection. I'm not saying it's skinwalkers and what we're seeing up here in PA, but it's awful interesting that all this stuff is cropping up all of a sudden.
It really is. And, I've noticed, I've done this stuff for 40 years, and you see cycles of these things. And part of it can certainly be attributed to things that bring it into the mass consciousness. There'll be a lot of UFO specials or shows or something on television, and all of a sudden, the number of reports of UFOs go up. Now, we can always attribute, part of that is, mistaken, people are just, they have it in their consciousness, so it's mistaken, they're mistaking something else. But then, there's also the other factor, and that's that people get more aware, and they also become more willing to share their accounts of these things. And I think that's part of what we see with a lot of these weird humanoid type of creatures. I had one. I haven't even had a chance to talk to you about this either, and it's not even on the blog yet. But I had a report come in a couple of weeks ago from Kentucky of a dogman encounter, and oddly enough, I saw someone on Facebook just report that they were following up on a dogman sighting in Kentucky, and I haven't reached out and contacted them yet to see if it's in the same region. But this is weird how these things, just crop up together all of a sudden, and it really, I think it validates it to a certain degree, because here you have independent people receiving these reports. Well, 3 or 4 people in Kentucky didn't just suddenly decide to make up a dogman encounter, or or suddenly mistake a bear for a bipedal canid type of creature or something. So there's something very curious to that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, now down in Kentucky, now they've had one phenomena that's been going on for a long time, the Beast Between the Lakes thing. I mean, I don't know exactly what that is, but there have been several reports about that. But I don't know of any other down there. Of course, there have been people that have written about certain sightings, but it does seem that this dogman phenomena is kind of moving out of the upper Midwest, southern Ontario, down into like now Ohio and West Virginia, PA, and into the Mid Atlantic now. And are they actually moving, or they're into these areas, or people are just seeing them, or just reporting them? And I think you're right. I think people are actually seeing these type of reports on TV with the paranormal shows, and they say, well, I saw something like that. I'll go ahead and report it. And I think that may be the reason why we're getting this stuff.
Yeah, I think that's one of the upsides to the paranormal becoming such a part of popular culture now, is that people have become more open-minded. I mean, I joke all the time about when I started in this field, if I went to a party and told people what I did, I was guaranteed a nice quiet evening by myself, because everybody thought, oh, this guy is weird, or I'm not talking about that stuff. But it's really it's completely opposite now. You go to a party and tell them what you do, and people are lined up out the door, because everybody has an experience. Everybody has an account they want to share, whether it's about a cryptid or a haunting or UFO site. And I think that's one of the benefits of this. But this dogman thing, people are always looking at this phenomena, especially the dreaded skeptics and so forth, and they say, oh, this is all new, this is, fabricated because of this movie or this TV show and such and such. But really, Lon, I dig into this phenomena, and I find that really none of it is new. I know you and I have talked about, the black-eyed children accounts, and everybody assumes, oh, that's a new phenomena. Well, really, it's not. It's a new identity for a phenomenon that's been around for a very long time. And the same thing is obviously true with these dogman encounters. I think you had cross-posted at some point some of the things I put up about bits and pieces I found in folklore in Pennsylvania about these werewolf encounters. And you're talking about the 1800s. People are seeing these things, and because these are primarily European settlers, they're identifying them as werewolves. But essentially the physical description is the same thing as what people are talking about with these dogmen. It's some kind of bipedal canid creature that in almost every account seems very sort of malicious and threatening. So we have to question, maybe the better question to look at is why now, outside of people being willing to talk about these encounters, why now are these things experiencing a new, flap or cycle or whatever you want to call it, that all of a sudden we're having a lot of these things crop up?
Yeah, I mean, I have found encounters back into the 1800s. In fact, the Amish have made a couple reports over the years, the Dueo reports, when they started moving some of their farms out of Lancaster County down into Maryland. And these Dueo dogman upright, canids, these sightings were pretty common around the Frederick, Maryland area. Several reports of the Dueo. So yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
These things are part of the legend, and in fact, the native people also had accounts as well in central PA. The Lenape or the Delaware Indians, they have a dogman legend as well that you know it fairly parallels what we're getting. So this is one of
Mm-hmm.
these things now when the weather breaks. Hopefully, we're going to be able to get in the field again and start trying to document some of this. But I tell you, some of the sightings that we have had and that have been reported to us are really interesting. And I mean, there's even some supernatural aspect of some of these as well. And I'm not going to go here and say, well, it's all flesh and blood. I don't think that's the case. I think there's some supernatural beings out there that are kind of mixing in and out. So who knows? But it's a
Yeah, I
very odd
absolutely.
phenomenon.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that too. There's just too many. A lot of these accounts, whether it's a skinwalker or dogmen, and so forth. There's often very curious elements to the encounter or the sighting that sort of bend the rules as we understand them in terms of physical laws. And of course, a dog standing on its hind legs alone does, walking around. But you get a lot of other elements, and it's very interesting. A lot of these creatures, you'll see accounts where they will exceed speeds that are possible, for a man or a dog or wolf or whatever it is. And you see cases where these things suddenly vanish or suddenly appear. So there are a lot of supernatural elements that do come in to the situations, and you have to question what the other factor going on here is. I know the account in Kentucky, which is I unfortunately don't have a whole lot of information on that one at this point either. It's a woman who was relating the experience to me, but she said that and this happened at her home on a couple of occasions, and she said the first time she had two dogs that were in the house and they went absolutely crazy, at her kitchen door trying to get out and snarling and just, she said they were acting so vicious, like they wanted to attack something. But what happened was she had motion lights on the back of her property, and she said that she was looking outside trying to determine why these dogs are reacting this way. She lives in a rural area. There's plenty of wildlife on, and they, around. And she said they never react that way to, deer or possum or anything else. But, suddenly they were just going ballistic. And she said that as she was watching out her kitchen window, the motion lights came on as something entered that part of her yard. And she said that it looked like a bipedal painted creature. And as it took a few steps more into the light, she said that her dogs suddenly just turned tail and ran and ran to a different part of the house and hid. And it's always fascinating to me when you hear about any of these bizarre type of encounters where an animal is present, because obviously animals have a different range of senses than we do as humans. And I find that adds a really interesting and different component to help us understand exactly what these creatures are. And, something at first really set those dogs off, but then terrified them when they got a sense of it being closer. So fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we've also got something going on here on the East Coast that is kind of unusual. Well, it's not unusual, but it's natural. We're starting to get a mix of coyotes and wolves in this area.
What are they called?
Coy wolves, or
Coy
is that what they're
wolves.
called?
Yeah, coy
I don't.
wolves.
Coy wolves, yeah.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
apparently, as these coyotes were moving east, some of them got into Canada and were interbreeding with gray wolves. I know up in Maine and up in the Maritimes, they've got some decent populations. But I was told recently that there have been some populations noted in Pennsylvania, and it seems that these, coyotes, they're one of those, they usually don't stand their ground. I mean, they react to sound but such, but these coy wolves seem to want to stand their ground, and they're decent sized canids. So I don't know. I mean,
Right.
I hope this doesn't turn into a problem, but I know they are starting to come in here.
Well, and I know that, coyotes have spread dramatically. I mean, there's a lot of major cities that see coyotes coming to the city limits these days, and it's
They've had them in
very.
Central Park. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, a
Yeah.
very intelligent and resourceful animal, and of course, they, as you said, they will run at sound, but they're also, they're pack animals, and they'll prey on neighborhood pets and things like that, and you know, there's a lot of these areas where people just can't leave their house pets outside anymore because the coyotes will run off with them. But
Hmm.
these coy wolves, I've seen some of the documentation on that too, and it's a very curious hybrid, that's been created from the two populations, and who knows how that plays into it. I mean, at the least, it's a different animal that may factor into some of these sightings, but I tell you, these are still not creatures that are going to stand up and run bipedally.
No, you're right. And it kind of makes me think now too. And Butch and I have talked about this a lot. How many of these Bigfoot reports, the numerous Bigfoot reports that we get in Pennsylvania and in surrounding states, that actually could be Dogman reports or upright canid reports? Um,
Yeah, that's a good question. And so many of the reports, they're often, well, people saw, it running across the road, or they saw it behind some trees and things like that. And, often there's not enough of a, prolonged sighting to get great details about the figure, other than it's very large and bipedal. And yeah, you do have to kind of wonder that, these dogman sightings, it's really weird, Lon, I tell you, because I've been down in South and Central America and heard of dogman type sightings down there.
mhm.
So this is sort of a universal thing. And of course, Sasquatch type creatures are pretty much universal too. But I think that it would pay to start looking closer, like you said, at some of these accounts and see, okay, are all of these definitely Sasquatch type sightings, or is there something else sort of, going along with that? Because essentially these two types of creatures, Sasquatch and Dogman, I mean, they would follow a lot of the same patterns. They would live out in the wilderness. They would be prey animals, and or predators, excuse me. So it's a lot of close similarities between the two.
Yeah, it sure
Well, Lon,
is.
you have those reports where they get a facial observation of these creatures, and they say they have a protruding snout in some of these Bigfoot reports. So that kind of gives
Hmm.
more validity to your theory there on some of those reports might actually be Dogman.
Yeah, I mean it's something to think about. Now we've actually been cross referencing. I've been going back and looking at old reports. I know Butch has as well. Um, Even here in Maryland, I've been checking a few of them out. There, sometimes you get a report that just doesn't seem like the typical Bigfoot report. That especially one where there's no sighting, but there's a lot of different phenomena going on. I mean, it could very well be something else other than a Bigfoot. So, it's just something, like you said, it's something to think about. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the black-eyed kids
Oh,
phenomena.
great. Lon's trying
Uh,
to give me the creeps.
what have you gotten anything recently that we haven't talked?
I still I still get reports all the time, and
Yeah.
most of them pretty much fall into the same range of there's not a lot of variety with these entities, whatever they are. But, regardless, I mean, all the accounts are super creepy, and it usually entails, these things approaching somebody or, trying to get in their home or car or whatever. I tell you a couple of things that are going on with that, it seems. Now, one, it looks like we're in sort of a new cycle of these accounts too, because I know that you've posted a fair number of them recently. I've had a lot of reports. There are other investigators that, research this and collect their reports. I know Dave Schrader, Jason Offit, a lot of those guys are constantly getting these accounts. And, I try to throw some of them up on the blog every once in a while because people are so fascinated about it. One thing I have noticed that is sort of curious, what I am hearing more of are encounters with black-eyed adults.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have to consider, I guess, that the sort of modern wave of these black-eyed kid encounters started in '97, and this is 20 years on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of curious to me that when I researched the first book, which on the black-eyed kids, which came out in 2012, I had researched that for a couple of years previously, really heavy duty, and I found very, very few black-eyed adult encounters. There'd be a few sporadic ones, and a lot of those could often be attributed to, well, it was a hoax, or maybe it was something else going on, or whatever. But man, now those seem a lot more common, and just bizarre things. Like people running into these strange people at Starbucks coffee or grocery stores and things like that. And I haven't I haven't really looked at that heavily. I've just been so involved with other projects, but I have noticed there's a lot of these accounts coming in, and man, I don't know.
Well, you had in your book is Strange Intruders. You had a couple of black-eyed adult instances in there. In fact, you had the one of this guy by the name of Marcel, and this couple had black eyes, and I think there was another one with a girl by the name of Charlene in Florida.
Yeah, that's
maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
I tell you, there was one that came in, and I can't remember. I don't think I put this one on the blog or anyone else, but this was in Florida also, which is what made me think of it. And it was an elderly couple, actually, who were, I don't know, they were driving back from visiting their children or grandchildren or something like that. And this guy reported to me that, they had stopped and eaten at, like a breakfast type of restaurant or something. And that it was one of these restaurants that had a little gift shop in it, like Cracker Barrel type places and things like that, dude. And he said that his wife came running over to him because he was paying the bill. And she said, there's a very, I forget what word she used, but she basically said, there's this really creepy man who is following me around. I want to leave. And this guy, he's like ex-Army or something. And he's like, I'm not having any of that. And so he goes walking over to see what this guy's problem is. Well, he wasn't there where his wife had pointed. And so they go ahead and leave. They get in their car, and as they're pulling out of the parking lot, his wife says, "Oh my God, there he is!" And he is standing at the front, outside of this restaurant, and he was just sort of staring at them. And now at this point, neither one of them has said anything about black eyes, but she had said later on, she said that when the guy approached her, she thought he was some kind of a pervert, because he walked up and he was looking at the floor, and he said, you have white shoes. And, she got really creeped out, as any woman would, has this guy got a shoe fetish, or, what's going on here, some weirdo. So she ran away from him and told her husband, the two of them are pulling out, and here's this guy standing, in front of the restaurant and just kind of glaring at them. Well, she's yelling at her husband to just get out of here. And the husband's kind of like, I'm going to let him have it or whatever. And he stops the vehicle, gets out, and the guy's not there. And he said it really puzzled him because there was nowhere for this guy, as he said, to take cover, to hide, or anything else. So, he thought, well, maybe I scared him, maybe he ran off or whatever. He gets in his car and they drive on. And they get, an hour down the road or something, and they stop at a rest area. And they both get out to use the bathroom. And the gentleman said that as he was walking towards the men's room, there's this guy. It's the same guy. He's standing there by the door for the men's room. And this guy, ex-Army, basically a retired badass, looks at this guy and said that he just got the creepiest feeling he'd ever had in his life. And he said this guy was just looking at him dead on, and he says, solid black eyes. And he said that he walked back across to the outside of the ladies, didn't even go to the restroom. He said all he could think of was just walk away. So that's what just kept repeating in his mind was, I got to get away from this guy. And he said that he, went over, waited for his wife, and as soon as she was out of the bathroom, didn't tell her, said we need to go right away, and got in the vehicle. And he finally told her when they were at home. But, and they lived 2 or 3 hours away. But he said that he was paranoid the whole way home and kept looking in the rearview mirror and kept thinking, is this guy following us? What's going on? Never saw a vehicle that, stayed the same, followed him the whole way or anything like that. So, again, here we go with bizarre phrases that don't make any sense. This sort of aura of malicious intent. And this guy, he told me, this is not a guy you would mess with, but he told me, he said, David, he said, I just knew that I could not tangle with this guy. And that I had to get away from it. I just had to be away from it.
Well, that's kind of similar in a way to the incident that JC and Jack had out in the Four Corners last year with the that woman who had approached them with the black eyes.
That's right.
That was weird.
And she was walking in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, she was out in the middle of the desert. Yeah,
she was in the middle of the desert. And that's a fascinating account, and you talk about creepy. And it was a situation. I don't know if you've had JC on the show to talk about this or not, but my God, they're driving, and here's this woman, and like any of us would stop and say, hey, are you okay? You're in the middle of nowhere. Is something happened? Why is this woman out here? And they pulled up next to her and put the window down, and man, when she turned and glared down in the car at them, solid black eyes. And
I don't think I ever remember JC being so shook up as he was after that account. I mean, you've known JC a long time, longer than I have, and that incident really shook him up.
It really shook him up. And JC, I've been out in the field with JC. I mean, he's seen a lot of weird stuff just like I have. He's encountered a lot of things and followed up on a lot of cases, and that really shook him up, Lon. I mean, he was of course he contacted me right away and just very bizarre. And I'm trying to remember now the details because they found, maybe you remember this, they found a painting or something. Do you remember that? It was in, oh gosh, it's going to bug me now because I'm usually really good with all these kind of details. They saw a painting somewhere that really resembled this woman.
What I remember was that, that JC got nauseous and sick, and Jack was feeling sick too.
Oh yeah.
And the guys that were driving the car were kind of nonchalant about the whole thing, but they told those guys to haul ass. They went down the road quite a distance, and they got out of the car, and this woman was behind them.
Right.
They looked back the road. She's walking down the road, and I know it was a creepy story. It really was.
And there's a lot of those accounts, where these things, whatever they are showing up on highways and out of the way roads and things like that. And that, of course, that's even creepier. You're in the middle of nowhere where you don't expect to see someone, and then you do see a person, and of course they're not in a vehicle or anything. So your first thought, your mindset is, oh wow, are these people okay? What's going on here? And you stop to try to help, and you get this whole really unnerving experience. And
I think
I see a lot of these things.
Because you had like a Grinning Man encounter down in Carolina, didn't you?
No, oh yeah.
I got to hear about this.
Yeah, that's in Strange Intruders, actually. I did. I always say when it comes to this type of phenomena, I think that sometimes I really believe that a lot of factors come into play, and that one of the factors that come into play, I believe, are certain combinations of people make for greater possibilities of experiencing strange things.
Mm-hmm.
And, throughout my life, I've investigated and researched with a lot of different people, and, there's a small handful of them that I know that if, I'm in the field with this person, that the possibilities, really go up through the roof. And JC's one of those. Now, I can go out in the field with JC and something is going to freaking happen. But, I had this friend for a lot of years in North Carolina, and he was not interested in strange phenomena. And, he would sort of tolerate it. He had a little bit of interest maybe in some UFO stuff and everything, but for the most part, he just thought, and he used to joke that, man, anytime I'm hanging out with you, something weird happens. Well, here we were driving on this very remote stretch of road, and it's really an area, I haven't been back there in years, but back then it's an area where, you could drive for several miles and you'd see a farm, here and there, and that would be it. And here we are, we're driving, it's a beautiful day, and we come to this stretch of road, and ahead, now I was in the passenger seat, he was driving, and ahead of us on the right side of the road, I see a figure.
Mm-hmm.
And he's standing in weeds that probably come, up to his knees or something. Now, this is another one of those situations. This is not an area, I had driven this road countless times. This is not an area where you ever see anybody walking, or standing or anything like that. And the woods are pretty dense, so it's high weeds and a ditch and things like this. And here's this figure standing on the side of the road. It was on my side of the road. And as we approached it, it was the weirdest thing, Lon, because, there was just something different was happening. I'll say it that way. As we approached this figure, I'm watching him through the windshield. And as we get closer, and it seems like everything's sort of slowing down, I'm looking at this figure. He's wearing a long coat. He's wearing a top hat, not quite a full top hat, but one of those, it's a little bit shorter, top hat style. He had one of his hands sort of up under his chin, rubbing his thumb and his fingers together, which is, kind of creepy in itself. And, below this coat, you see this shiny belt, which is the other thing that I really remember. But the thing that stood out the most was this figure had this bizarre grin that really is not humanly possible. I reflected on it later and even put this in the book. I think that it reminded me of the Joker, the Batman villain from the comics, that just had this hideously large grin that went up both sides of his face. And he was making eye contact with us as the car passed him. And as we went by him, I shifted my gaze from the windshield to my passenger window to continue looking at him. He was glaring down into the car with this hideous grin. And as we passed him, I whipped my head around to look out the rear window. And he was standing in the middle of the road, staring at the car. Now, obviously, it's not human. It's almost as if he had teleported from that position on the side of the road to being dead center of the road, staring at the car as it drove away. And, of course, Tom, the driver, is just freaking out, and he's like, "Oh my God, what was that?" And I'm like, "Stop the car, stop the car." He's like, "You're freaking nuts." Yeah, not his exact words, but I said, "No," I said, I just want to see if the guy's still there," because we had went around a curb. And I said, "Come on, man, just stop the car and just turn around." And so this argument ensues for a few seconds, and I get him to stop the car. And I said, "Look," I said, I want to see if this guy's still there. And he's like, "Well, the guy's probably some freaking psycho that's going to flash us up or whatever. This is the era of the slasher films and everything, Jason and Halloween and all that." Look, man, just turn the car back around, go part ways, just so we can see if he's still there. He agrees to it. He makes a U-turn. It goes back, about 2/3 of the way to the spot where this guy was. There's nothing. Can't see this guy anywhere. I jumped out of the car. I went nuts, and I go running up the road, and I'm running on the pavement itself. This is no other vehicles. You rarely saw anybody else back here. I run back to this location where this guy was. There's no sign of him anywhere. Now, in the weeds in the area where he was standing, there's sort of an impression. It's like, this guy, was something standing there. There was something there, but the woods were so dense that, there's no way that a figure, especially one dressed like that, could have navigated quickly into the trees. And, he would have had to have, jumped over this ditch and then across another little semi-open area and then into the trees. And, just, again, not something humanly possible. But, man, what a bizarre figure this was. And it actually sort of rolled into a bunch of other things that happened because there were some weird incidents in the aftermath of this. That night, we had an electrical storm in the area. It's a little bit unusual. And the house next door to Tom, the driver, was struck by lightning. He caught fire.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, oh, this is weird, I mean, I made notes of all this stuff. Thought this is kind of strange. I had had someone else contact me about a UFO sighting around that same time. That they had seen a UFO that night. All of this happened at the same time that we had seen this Grinning Man. Now, what's interesting is that, I made notes of this stuff, and I think even at the time, didn't necessarily connect this UFO sighting, which is in a different part of the county, to this Grinning Man occurrence. I thought it was interesting synchronicity. But then later on, I talked to John Keel about this stuff, who was particularly interested in these Grinning Man encounters. And one of the things he told me, he said, "David," he said, "you need to dig into everything you can find." He said, "You will find some other phenomena around that same period. He says, I can almost guarantee it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, indeed, that did prove to be right. I did find a few other witnesses that had seen a UFO around the same time. And I also found another witness, which, unfortunately, this was an account. All of this stuff is pre-internet, so very different world for researchers back then. But there was a small UFO group that was in the neighboring state, and they had some documentation of a couple of UFO sightings, but they also had this really weird report that they didn't follow up on because they didn't think anything of it, about a woman who had, in the same area of a UFO sighting, had seen what she described as someone dressed as a hobo clown running across the road in front of her with a long coat on and a big hat and a really freakishly large grin. Now, she saw this figure briefly, so she thought, oh, it's one of those old hobo clowns, he's got that grin painted on. But I can tell you the figure I saw did not have this hideous grin painted on in any way. It was I assume it was flesh, it looked like his natural features. But, it was a good lesson from Keel for me. You always follow up and you find, okay, what other phenomena connects in at the same time? What else is going on? What are the other factors? And that's really when I reflected back on it and put all of these different pieces together and thought about this. Wow, we've got a weird electrical storm. We've got UFO sightings. I don't have an answer for what it all means, but, I can certainly say, here's a grouping of strange phenomena, much of which we don't understand, that all occurred around the same, proximity.
Well, I mean, it's not much different than what Woody Derenberger said about with Edward Cole. And, then all the UFO encounters and, the Grinning Man and all the other weird stuff
That's right.
was going on around Point Pleasant back then.
That's right.
Is that the same
and
phenomenon?
I can tell you.
Possibly.
Well, there's a fair enough. It might have been, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of accounts of these grinning men, and of course, Keel collected some of them in his books. And, then you've got these areas, Lon brings up Point Pleasant. I mean, what a strange place.
Mm-hmm.
I was there recently, and just it's sort of a vortex of weirdness, I think. I was there with a fellow investigator, and we had some strange things happening. We spent a few days in the area investigating, and man, there's something very different about that town. I don't even know exactly what words to use, but it's an odd place.
It has a feeling to it.
And
You're right.
it is.
Really is odd.
And I've been in other towns like that, around the country, and sometimes these places, you just, I've gotten to the point where just driving into them, I kind of know this is one of those places, and you can feel that there are a lot of secrets and a lot of, a lot of people have stories and, a lot of strange accounts, and, just, I'll tell you, here's a little sample of what happened when we were in Point Pleasant. I was there with another investigator, a fellow named Dave Spinks, and we were investigating the Low Hotel, which is haunted. It's one of the locations that Keel actually stayed in when he was investigating Mothman. But we decided, we went out to the bunker area a couple of times, which anybody familiar with the Mothman story, will know what that's about. The bunker area is really kind of an odd place, and we were driving around, and this was during daylight hours, and checked out a couple of the bunkers, looked at some other things, and this is gravel road. We were driving this area further back in the bunkers, and Dave was driving at the moment, and he stopped the vehicle, and we got out because there was a deer carcass on the side of the road. Now, it was in this pull-off area, and at first we thought, oh, it's a deer that's been hit, by a vehicle or something. We got out and walked over to it, and we actually passed it initially, and it was on Dave's side of the road. And he said, "Hold on." He backed up. We got out and we went and looked at this carcass. Now here's where it gets bizarre. The deer's head was gone, but the lower jaw was there. And when you looked at this carcass, it looked like something had just ripped the head off. There were no gunshot wounds. Our first thought was, it's hunters who, after the antlers or whatever. There were no gunshot wounds. It did not look like the deer had been hit by a vehicle. There were no tire tracks. There were no footprints. There was nothing around the carcass of this deer, like for a very large area. And it, for all intents and purposes, it looked like this thing had just been dropped down, out of nowhere. And, we even went so far as to go off the gravel and into the grass. We're searching the whole perimeter, trying to find some kind of tracks or signs of something else that had been there. And, no predator had touched this animal. And it had clearly been there for, maybe a few days, because it had some of the bloating and everything, but not a single predator had touched it. Now, there's coyotes around there, there's crows, there's all kinds of scavengers, but nothing had touched this animal. Now, it got weirder because when we looked up this dirt road from the direction we had come, there was a canid walking in the road. But, guys, this thing was walking with its back really hunched up. It was not a coyote. It was dark colored. Our first thought was coyote. Then I said, no, it's just, look at the coloring and the tail. And in fact, we're looking at it really close, and it maybe could have been a wild dog with mange or something. But I'll be darned if it didn't look like one of these Texas chupacabra things.
Wow.
And this thing was walking really strange. It sort of circled in the road. We're scrambling to try to get cameras out and, up on it. And this thing darts off the side of the road. So, we went up the road quickly to try to get, a better view of it, a better glimpse. And it had taken off into the trees and so forth surrounding the bunkers, and it was gone. But, how weird, and that's just a small taste of the weirdness of Point Pleasant.
Yeah, I mean, I have a friend, well, he's an investigator, Rob Shaw, who lives around there. I mean, he lives in the area, and he's investigating, hominid and sightings and dogman sightings. And, what you describe sounds a lot like what he has described before.
Right.
And some of the, he's even sent me some audio files on some of the way these things sound, and it is just not a coyote, and it's not a wolf. It's something different.
Right.
There's
right.
something around there. And you talked about the carcass and predators not, scavengers not touching it. I mean, that sounds a lot like the incidents with these mutilations. I mean, these cattle and such are, they're deposited after whatever happens to them, and
exactly
those scavengers, they just still live.
And we have to wonder. I mean, that's just not, the scavengers, that's part of the natural cycle, and it always happens. I mean, you're driving down the highway and you see a carcass, there's scavengers on it, or they've been, picked it over. And, this is really weird. I mean, this is a prime area out around the bunkers. There's a lot of wildlife out there. And, all of these scavengers are going to make a meal of that. There's wild dogs, there's coyotes, there's crows, there's everything else. And nothing had touched that carcass. Now, that in itself, that's a strange mystery. It's just not natural. And we have to wonder, I mean, is there a supernatural element? Is there something, scientific? Is there something coming off that animal carcass that prevents any scavenger from going near it? Because I was even, I mean, I was even down, looking on the ground, trying to find, if there were any signs of birds having landed there or anything to even check it out. And nothing had been around there. Nothing. We did find one anomalous footprint that was really strange. But, it's just a singular print, and it looked like maybe a bare human print or something. But that in itself, of course, is odd, too. This was, this was about a month ago. So, cold weather, or 2 months ago, I'm sorry. But, cold weather and not anybody out there walking barefoot. And they didn't make just one footprint and leave, So weird stuff, really weird stuff.
That is, I got to get up there again. I got to get up there and do some investigation. I keep saying I'm going to go up there, but
road trip.
It's just some of the reports we get from that I get just myself from in that area, even upriver further. The whole Ohio Valley, Ohio River Valley, has got some weird phenomena that happens, but it's just It is. You're right. It's just something you feel when you go there. It's like, I mean, it's the creep factor.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I mean, you kind of drive into town, and on the one hand, you've got it's a small town America. It's kind of it's obviously been hit by the economy, downturn, and it's there's that whole side of it, and it sounds sort of rolls up the sidewalk at 5 o'clock. I mean, there's nothing going on, but you take all of those things out of that, and there's something else in the equation that is just, it's weird. There's something really odd about the place. Now, it could be the land. It could be, there's the whole legend of the curse of Chief Cornstalk. Point Pleasant itself has had a lot of different things historically. I mean, there was a battle or a revolutionary battle there. There's a lot of different things that come into play in that area. So, the residual energy alone, and then of course the collapse of the Silver Bridge and the Mothman sightings, it left a huge imprint on the place. And in fact, we were there in December for the anniversary of the collapse, and man, that's it's a real solemn occasion. And of course, they do a thing in the public square and read the names of the people who were lost during the tragedy and everything else. But all of that aside, it's one of those places, and there's a bunch of them around the country and around the world. But it's one of those places that there's something just not quite right when you go there.
Well, the town really pays homage to all these things all around it. There's murals and statues and historical plaques all around the town. It's definitely got a feel to it, David.
It does, and of course you got the Mothman Museum, which commemorates all the sightings and the things that happened there, and that's one of the only paranormal museums in the world. And then it's a cool little place, and of course they have the big Mothman Festival every year, and they do sort of celebrate that whole aspect of weirdness, and that's really cool as far as I'm concerned. But it's curious to me that we talk to a lot of people, and there are people there with stories that don't want to talk about them. Things they've encountered and things that have happened, and they don't want to talk about it. So there's this one aspect there that there's something. There are obviously some things that have happened there that are unsettling in a different way, and I'm talking about in a modern context, and people are just not comfortable with sharing some of that stuff at this point.
So, David, what kind of book project you got coming up? Do you have anything planned?
I do. I have actually a few things coming out this year, and I've hardly talked about this at all. This is almost an exclusive. The next thing coming out is called Wood Knocks, and this is it's a paperback book, but I'm calling it a journal. It actually includes contributions from a bunch of other cryptozoologists, and it's a Sasquatch themed book. So it's going to have a chapter by Lyle Blackburn, King Gerhard did a chapter. I did a chapter myself. My chapter is on Sasquatch encounters on the Navajo reservation.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got some great people in there. Linda Godfrey did a chapter on Wisconsin Sasquatch encounters. Lyles is on some Texas Sasquatch material. So it's going to be really great. I'll be giving people a sneak peek of the cover in the next couple of weeks, and it's by artist Sam Sharon, who did my Strange Intruders cover. So
that cover was amazing. That was I tell you, that was one of the best covers I've ever seen in any crypto or paranormal book. It really was something.
Yeah, he is a fantastic artist. He really is, and I think I swear every time he does something for me, it gets better and better. And he's just it helps. He's got a big interest in the field himself, and so it's and art is his passion. So he is really phenomenal. He really is. So anyway, Wood Knots is coming out. That'll be out probably within the next couple of months. I've got a DVD coming out that is going to have some material from a haunted location on it. That's something that I've put together with a couple of other guys, Dave Spinks and Mike Ricksecker. And beyond that, I got so many projects and so much stuff going on, and it's all good. I love what I do. So just keep an eye on the blog and follow me on Facebook and stuff. There's really a lot of exciting stuff coming up this year.
Well, we'll have to have you come back and talk about it. I mean, I look forward to you doing that.
Hey, yeah, anytime, guys. You're one of those shows that usually just need to make it in my schedule, and I usually try to make time for it. So it's always a pleasure.
Okay, well, thanks again, and good luck on your projects.
Thanks a lot, guys. It's been great being on.
I know we'll be talking soon.
Thanks a lot, David. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
You too.
Mm-hmm.
David Weatherly, folks. twocrowsparanormal.blogspot.com is where you can go for more information on him. Good show tonight, Lon.
Yeah. David's always a great guest. He's
you hate to interrupt him when
he's one of those. He's one of those guys like JC that just get out there and dig up his stuff, and he never disappoints. And his last book, the Strange Intruders book, that's like that's a reference to me. I mean, there's a lot of odd stuff in there.
Oh yeah.
And you could find stuff to talk about and do 5 or 6 shows with it. So I'm looking forward to this new book.
I think you, myself, David, and JC need to take a road trip.
Sounds good to me.
I think we're gonna have a lot of fun. My goodness.
Sounds good to me.
Next week, William Michael Mott will be joining us. He's a paranormal researcher and author of Caverns, Cauldrons, and Concealed Creatures. That's a title. And he'll be joining us next week, Monday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. I forgot what time we came on the air. It happens. He's talking about that Grinning Man, and it just gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, that's weird.
I'd have slammed it in reverse.
It's even more. It's really weird when you read it too. It's he had it. It was part of the Indrid Cole Grinning Man section he had in the book, and that whole phenomena is strange. And he talked about the UFO encounters and such that are that were part of that Indrid Cole situation that John Keel wrote about. Weird stuff. I mean, really strange. So,
well, as we talked about Point Pleasant there at the end, in the chat room, I was telling folks tonight that when you're in the TNT area, they have a plant there that has these cooling towers, and they go up into the air, and they have these bright red lights on them, and it just makes you feel like something's watching you. It's creepy as hell.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been there, but I tell you, it does have that weird.
It does.
Feel to it. I mean, it really does.
Well, I'll be there this September again.
Yeah, hopefully I can get up there soon. I mean, with everything going on this year, I don't know, but I'm going to try and do it.
Road trip. I can't get enough of these road trips. Anyhow, folks, you've been listening to Arcane Radio. Sean Forker, Lon Strickler. Thanks for stopping in with us tonight. And we'll see you next week. And archive will be posted tomorrow on Tuesday. Go to StitcherRadio.com. Leave us a review. We want to know how we're doing. We want you folks to give us your feedback. When I hit the microphone, so we can have the best show possible we can bring you guys. We really try to make this a good show and want your feedback. info@arcaneradio.com. Email us with your guest suggestions, show suggestions, anything else you have. We'll be glad to take. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.